of X39 works? And is it a frequency technology, or is it a light technology, or what is the difference?
So wavelength and frequency are inversely proportional. So when we're talking about stimulating the body with light, the convention is to use wavelength. But we could describe light in terms of frequency as well. It's just, it's not the standard convention. So in other words, if we wanted to say that we wanted to treat the body with a band of orange light that might be effective in stimulating mitochondrial function, that would be 660 nanometers. We wouldn't say, oh, this is going to be this frequency in terahertz, you know, what it converts over to. We would just say it's going to be in nanometers as a wavelength, but they're inversely proportional to one another. Now, the difference, though, between LifeWave and frequency medicine, I suppose, is often thought of as we have, let's say, an electrical signal we're putting into the body, we're using magnetic therapy, and we're treating the body with a specific frequency. And I have over 70 patents on this, so I know the field pretty well, and we've put quite a bit of time into it. And there is quite a bit of good that can come out of frequency-based medicine, but like anything else, it's all a matter of how you do it, and there's some really good products that are out there. What's really different about LifeWave is that, and here's a way to describe it, is that if we turn on the radio, I don't know if anybody uses radio anymore, but if they do, the reason why we can hear a sound is because there's a wave that's being transmitted, and the wave is encoded with information. Now, in frequency medicine, if we want to refer to it that way, we might put a sine wave into the body, and the sine wave or square wave is repeating at a certain frequency. So let's say it's repeating at 100 hertz or 500 hertz, whatever frequency is being used. That frequency doesn't contain any information. And so as a result, if you were to hear that, it would just sound like a hum, and that's it. Now, in the example with radio, that's like LifeWave. What we're doing is blending different wavelengths of light so they can be encoded with information that the body can interpret. And so if we were just to stimulate the body with light, we couldn't elevate copper peptide, we couldn't elevate glutathione or carnosine or anything that any of our products do. So the real benefit behind the technology is that we can use very, very low levels of light that are encoded with information to cause the body to produce these very specific biochemical changes. And of course, we just had a clinical study published using blood data, you know, gold standard, in a 60-person double-blind placebo-controlled study where we measure the blood, and sure enough, stimulating with X39, we show statistically significant increases in copper peptide. So the way the technology is working, we stimulate the body with different wavelengths of light, and this leads to very beneficial changes in the biochemistry of the body.
Okay. And so with the X39, we're stimulating it with light, which is elevating the GHK, correct?
Right. Well, GHK and GHK-Cu.
Okay. And so the GHK is actually activating your stem cells and telling them to make more stem cells and to make the stem cells younger?
Yes. Yes. So now what's so interesting about this, and we have to give thanks to Dr. Lauren Picard. The guy is a true genius. He should win a Nobel Prize. Incredible person, devoted over 45 years of his life to this research, and he's still going strong. And so he began this work back in the 60s. And, you know, to put this in proper frame, to show you how far ahead of his time he was, back then, it was believed, and even up until recently, that you're born, you age, and then you die. And Dr. Picard made the observation, hey, if I take these old liver cells from someone that's 80 years old and I incubate them in the blood from someone that's in their 20s, all of a sudden, those cells start to behave like younger cells. What's in the blood that's doing it? And he was eventually able to isolate it and find out that it was copper peptide.
Wow.
But the story didn't end there. He started to see, I think you like superheroes, right? Mm-hmm. So usually, okay, so let's talk about like the X-Men, right? So you have Wolverine, and his ability is he can heal. And you've got Magneto, and he can control magnetism. And you've got Professor Xavier, he's got these mind powers. Well, a lot of times in the body, peptides have very, very specific powers. They have very specific functions. But what he was finding with copper peptide was that it had many different functions in the body, and its actions were not very consistent with what you would normally think of as being the behavior of a peptide.
David, you're muted.
David, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go.
We didn't hear. We heard it was inconsistent with the peptide, and then you went mute.
Yeah, and so what he eventually discovered was that the reason why copper peptide was having all of these broad functions was because it was acting to reset the genes in our body to a more youthful state. And this was the real power of copper peptide, so that it wasn't just triggering one event, it was triggering multiple events by manipulating the genes in a very, very beneficial way. So the net end result is it will activate the P63 gene, and this causes the stem cells to mobilize. The stem cells are now functioning in a more youthful state, and they can do a better job at what they're supposed to do. But when you take copper peptide and you expose them to the stem cells in the skin, those stem cells revert to pluripotent stem cells, which are the universal cells. Those pluripotent cells now go into the blood, and they can be used to increase the total number of circulating stem cells so they can facilitate very rapid wound repair.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So to take, full advantage of this, we want to make sure that we get adequate amounts of protein, healthy fats. We want to make sure we get dietary copper, basically give the body the building blocks. That way, when you're using X39, you can optimize the results.
So is the new study available online?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it posted today. And so It's going to be right at the top. You go to the